Kamita is a clueless idiot who can't secure a job, let alone a date. However, everything changes when he gets rejected by his crush, sending him on a speedrun to bag every hottie in his school. It starts in the council room where Miss Onigata asks Kamita why he's chosen horned beetle as his primary career choice. He reveals he once caught it for a kid, which made him happy, meaning he wants to have a career in which he can make people happy. The teacher suggests he becomes a clown since he already has the face for it.
Damn!
But then she realizes he'll be better off drawing busty anime chicks for Discord mods. None of her ideas resonate with Kamita, making him worry about his dull future. Later, he meets his friend Iku, who figures that whatever he put in his career plans was dumb enough to warrant a teacher intervention. Kamita reveals talking to Miss Onigata has made him realize he needs to think about his future seriously. But he doesn't even see himself passing this grade. Kamita then walks into the class and finds a girl named Hikari sitting at his desk. When he asks her to move, she reveals she just wanted to see his reaction because he looks cute when he's confused. Her friends ask if she's still mad about losing the Santa contest to Kamita's sister. But Hikari says she's only messing with him. At home, his sister Tomoe asks Kamita if he's prepared for his finals, and Kamita reveals that even though he's struggling to plan his future, he'll give his best in the exams. The next day in school, Kamita fails to find a spot in the cafe and notices Hikari has her own table because she placed second in the contest. Hikari then invites him over and asks if he wants to become a manga artist, explaining how Miss Onigata has been singing his praises everywhere. She then asks him to sit, and her friends Yuki and Yoko start messing with him by asking him to draw adult magazines. Kamita says he has no time on his hands and that he has to study with Iku later, and the girls wonder if they're smashing in the library since they're always together. Later, while Kamita and Iku are studying, Hikari joins them out of nowhere, asking Iku to teach her as well. Iku is hesitant at first, but she begs him to teach her the stuff that he thinks will be on the test. Later, Kamita complains about how Hikari is always messing with her, but Iku says it's better this way because every girl in the class will turn against him if he gets on Hikari's naughty list. Iku then reveals he saw Hikari with another man outside of school who might be a sugar daddy because he looked too young to be her father. Following that, Kamita studies day and night and takes the exam, surprising everyone including himself by scoring pretty high. One of Hikari's friends is upset because she scored lower than him and asks him to teach her the next time. Just then, Kyoko shows up and assumes Kamita is very popular with the ladies when in reality he can't get a girl's number if she worked in tech support. Kamita explains he was just discussing the results with them, so she suggests they study together next time. Eiko then reveals he's going away for 2 weeks to cram school placed in a hotel and invites Kamita, but he says he'll think about it. Kamita is really proud of himself for doing well on the test, so they hit the arcade with their friend Araki. Kuo comments on how relaxed Araki is despite being the third year, and he reveals it's because he's gonna take over his family business. He also mentions that he's going on a 3-day miser tour with the students who want to join the workforce and that the girls from their class are also coming. Ikuo and Kamita are confused as to why Hikari would go out with Araki when she already has a boyfriend. Ikuo doesn't want people to hate them given Araki's popularity, so he suggests they keep their mouths shut. At night, he spots a new patisserie and learns that Hikari works there beside another man who looks nothing less than a Pokemon Tier 3 Twitch sub. Realizing he can also score Hikari despite his clown face, he calls Eiku to let him know he'll be coming to the cram school. As he packs up, Tomoe notices that he looks nervous and asks him to cheer up because he'll be meeting a lot of new chicks there, and one of them might give him her number out of pity. The next day, Kamita heads to the cram school with Eiku and both are excited to have this experience. Just then, Kamita spots a woman in a window, but she disappears as soon as Eiku looks, causing him to joke about the ghost of a third year who flatlined herself. Later, Kamita does poorly in the initial test and wishes he had gone to the beach with Hikari. However, he quickly snaps back to reality, telling himself that he is here to become a better person and will stick it out to the end. However, all his excitement goes down the gutter when he sees a creepy girl crawling in from the window. Despite initially pissing his pants, Kamita realizes the girl is Hikari who just wants a towel. It turns out that she was heading to the mixer tour, but her parents forced her to attend cram school when they found out about her job. She went out at this hour to find a bus stop to head home but failed to find any. Her parents even took away her phone, so she had to wait for the rain to stop before she could return. She was attacked by a deer when she saw his window open and decided to crawl in to dry herself. Kamita asks her to change before she catches a cold, but since all her clothes are wet, she asks to borrow his for the night. Kamita allows her to take a set for the night, and as she walks back to her room, the guy sees the Grand Canyon of her cheeks and thanks the plot gods for sending a hottie into his room. The next day, Kamita is woken up by a dream in which Hikari is sniffing him on a toilet seat. After taking his morning class, he meets Ikuo for lunch and tells him about last night. Just then, Hikari shows up and introduces them to her new friend Mako, who is in the same class as her. Turns out they did so poorly in the first test that the teachers decided to create a separate circus for the class clowns. The guy teaching them is obsessed with his bamboo stick, and Hikari doesn't like him because he asked her to clean toilets for trying to run away. Hikari asks Kamita if she can clean the bathrooms in his clothes, not realizing he's a filthy degenerate getting off on the idea. Later, Hikari and Mako take the maths class and then spend hours cleaning bathrooms, which exhausts them. Following that, Mako teaches her how to do laundry and Hikari thanks her because she would have felt bad about ruining Kamika's clothes. Mako then assumes Hikari and Kamita are dating, explaining how people are gossiping about her walking around in her boyfriend's sweats. She worries Hikari might be sad, but the girl is so freaky she creates an elaborate story about how Kamika spent the whole night rearranging her guts. Meanwhile, Kamita hears two girls, Miu and Toka, talk about Hikari because they assume she's flaunting her relationship in their faces. Kamita hides behind the vending machine because he doesn't want any trouble, but when Miu claims they were turning up the thrustometer all night long, he comes out of hiding to clear the misunderstanding. Just then, Hikari returns with his sweatsuit and starts flirting with him to make the girls jealous, giving them another reason to think they're doing it. Hikari then takes him to a discreet room where she returns his clothes and apologizes for making him part of her prank. To make up for it, she decides to make him a midnight snack and asks him to stay up for it. Later that night, the four of them gather for a late-night snack, and Hikari makes a Spanish omelette for them. After tasting the dish, Kamita starts throwing compliments at her, which makes her blush. Mako then jokes about Hikari acting as Kamita's wife since she's done his laundry and made him dinner, and Hikari follows along asking him if he wants to get married. Kamita is so shocked by it that he starts choking, and Hikari tells them how much she loves messing with this idiot. After some time, Hikari starts cleaning the dishes, and when Kamita asks her to let them be, she says she's doing this to return the favor before she attempts to escape again. However, Kamita is worried she'll get attacked by deer, so he urges her to stay. Seeing him care for her safely, Hikari decides to stay a little longer, making an excuse that the weather might go bad again. She then happily retreats to her room, leaving Kamita to return the dishes. A week into cram school, Kamita still has new ways to make himself look like an idiot, but at least Hikari and Mako are there to console him. He asks them to leave before the class begins, but they tell him they've now been promoted to his class. When Hikari starts whispering in his ear, they catch the attention of the whole class, who is sick and tired of their non-serious behavior. Hikari takes her jacket off to mess with them even more, but Kamita quickly covers her up, which she finds really sweet. Later, they meet up in the park and discuss the hostile environment in the class, but Kamita believes it's because people take their studies very seriously. Hikari believes she's the odd one out, but he tells her she'll fit in soon and that it might help if they don't talk in class. She asks why he came here, and Kamita hesitates to tell her the truth. During the next class, Hikari and Mako sit separately and avoid him even during lunchtime. At night, he recalls how he came here to score Hikari but can't tell her head-on because it'll make him look like a clown, even though he already does. Just then, Hikari stumbles into his room claiming he's bored to death and wants to spend time with him. She sees a bowl of leftover ramen and asks if he has more, but when he says no, she just chugs in the soup from the same bowl he had. Kamita tries to hide the excitement in his ding-dong by pretending to study at his desk, but gets distracted. He asks Hikari why he isn't with Mako, and she reveals it's because Mako is asleep by this time. When he asks her to focus on her studies, Hikari grabs one of his books and lies on his bed to read it. Kamita can't believe he has a chick lying in his bed at this hour, and things only get stiffer for him when she starts talking about how she wants to lie on a beach in a bikini. Kamita comments she'll look good in one, so she takes him to the men's bath so he can see it for himself. She then asks him to share his 2 cents on her look, and Kamita would have bonked her head and taken her to his man cave if they lived in the Stone Age. She then invites him to take a dip, and while in the pool, they talk about the weird feeling they're getting with their swimsuits on. Just then, they hear someone coming, and Hikari holds her breath underwater hoping Kamita will talk his way out of it. It turns out to be the bamboo stick teacher who tells Kamita to return to his room. Kamita is wearing a rainbow pareo and starts giving him fruity vibes, causing the guy to run off in fear for his life. After he leaves, Hikari comes out of the bath but gets dizzy because she held her breath for way too long. Kamita walks her to her room hoping she'd invite him in for some sloppy toppy, but Hikari gets embarrassed and asks if he'd like to get some fresh air. As they sit beside the empty pool, Hikari gets scared seeing a deer, but Kamita scares it off, stating they come here often to look for food. After some playful banter, Kamita catches Hikari off guard by asking if the guy at her workplace is her boyfriend. She gets all worked up because someone ratted him out to the disciplinary committee, which then informed her parents. Kamita swears it wasn't him, and Hikari reveals the guy he saw her with is actually the owner of the place with a wife and kids. A few days later, it's time to return home, but Kamita is confused because Hikari has stopped talking to him entirely, making him think Hikari believes he's the one who snitched. On the other hand, Aiku feels bad because they couldn't say goodbye to Mako, claiming she's not on any bus. Just then, Kamita spots a girl in a red robe watching them leave from the window and starts wondering if that's Mako. Turns out, Mako is a repeater who has to take extra classes, which explains why she wasn't on any of the buses. Meanwhile, Hikari returns home and calls Yuki to fill her in on where she has been for the past 2 weeks. The next day, Kamita walks to school with Tomoe, who wishes he had scored on the trip instead of studying. When he spots Araki and Yuki walking hand in hand, he tries to approach Hikari, but she avoids him for some reason. At school, he notices that Aiko is in a really good mood but cannot figure out why. Meanwhile, Yuki tells Hikari and Yoko that she's now dating Araki when Kamita walks into the class. He finds a note on his chair from Hikari and rushes to meet her outside. Hikari says she simply wants to return the clothes she borrowed and starts walking off, but not before asking him to keep their summer course a secret. Kamita asks her to drop the and tell him why she's been acting so weird, which sparks an argument between the two. Just then, one of their classmates walks in on them and introduces herself as Makoto, a first year on the disciplinary committee. She reveals she's heard lots of reports of depraved teenagers going to Pound Town in school, so she was just patrolling the campus. When she ran into a couple doing the dirty in the rabbit's den, she couldn't handle it and ran into them. She mumbles how the girl used to be an innocent puppy who even informed the committee of a student working illegally, which catches Hikari's attention. Hikari immediately heads to the rabbit's den with Kamita, where she finds Yuki forcing Araki to give her a taste test. After Araki runs off, Yuki steps out and is asked why she rated Hikari out to the disciplinary committee. She proudly says she wanted her out of the way so she could have Araki all to herself, and Hikari isn't even mad because it shows how passionate Yuki is about Araki. After they make up, Yuki asks why Kamita is here, and Hikari reveals she suspected him to be the snitch first, which is why she wanted him to see the truth. Later, Hikari makes him a snack to show her gratitude and to apologize for treating him like a discount coupon past the due date. She explains how Yuki is quite sharp and she would have figured out everything they did if they continued to talk, which is why they had to stop. Despite everything, Hikari still wishes she had gone to the beach instead, so Kamita suggests they go right now. Once there, Kamita pulls out a ball from his bag, which is the same ball he used to scare off the deer back in summer school. He reveals how he went to the pool several times like a lonely loser hoping she'd show up and picked it up during those times. Hikari quickly grabs the ball and throws it in his direction, but it lands in the ocean because of the strong wind. Kamita runs in to grab the ball and comes out drenching, and when Hikari tries to help him, she also gets splashed by a wave. After some playful banter, the two share a wholesome moment which ends with Hikari pinning him down and giving him his first underwater kiss. After changing up, she tells him how living away from home has made her realize how lucky she is to have parents. She talks about how she never did any chores at home, but Kamita gave him a chance to not only do his laundry, but also cook for him, which made her realize she's not a useless idiot after all. She enjoys cooking so much that she has decided to skip college and instead work at a restaurant where she can learn how to cook properly. Kamita is about to ask her out, but she friend zones him real hard, claiming she will be leaving the city after graduation. The guy suggests she learn to cook here, but she reveals it's impossible to find places that train newbies from scratch and pay them. With a heavy heart, Kamita agrees to stay friends with her, and she gives him a peck to thank him for making her see her true potential. A few weeks later, Yuki and Araki break up, so she goes crying back to her friends. Kamita and Hikari exchanged numbers, but never exchanged a text, so they drifted apart and started focusing on their careers. A few days later, Kamita, Ikuo, and Araki are playing a video game related to raising deer on their phones when a girl named Toru runs into them. Turns out, she is a hardcore gaming girl who sells bathwater for a living. The boys are shocked to see that she's at a higher level even though they have been playing the game ever since it came out. Just then, Tomoe and her friend Shiori walk down the stairs looking for Toru and are surprised to find her playing games with her brother. As Tomoe drags Toru to the club room, she promises Kamita that they'll meet later and trade a lot more than just items. The next day, Kamika tells his friends he will give her a special in-game item in exchange for her joining their team. Once they reach their usual spot, Toru is already waiting for them, much to their shock. The next moment, they are at a karaoke place singing like they've been friends for years. Toru takes the mic and starts singing anime songs, and after exploding her vocal cords and their air drums, she gets seated next to Kamika to taste his chocolate pudding. Following that, she gives items to Kamita that are suited for his in-game character, and the guys formally invite her to play more games with them. The next day, they buy a new chair for Toru so they can all hang out under the stairs. Soon after, a new game called Millibun comes out and the four of them visit the store together to buy it. They head to their usual spot and log in, but the game turns out to be quite difficult, causing them to die in the first few minutes. The four of them have a blast and decide to continue playing it later. In the changing room, Tomoe asks her how the gaming session with Kamita has been going, and she says it feels nostalgic because she's been playing solo for ages. Kamita told her earlier that the bunny character fits her personality, so Shiori suggests she cosplay it in Comic-Con. However, Toru changes the subject by complimenting Tomoe, which upsets Shiori. The next day, the gamer squad manages to beat a boss and get a bunny ring, which Ikuo transfers to Toru since it suits her character the best. However, Toru notices that Kamika is hoping for an item he could use, so she gives him a handmade figure of her character to lift his spirits. The guy happily accepts it, hoping it'll turn into Toru at night and give him a sloppy toppy. After school, the four of them hit the arcade, and while Araki is busy with a crane machine, Toru's eyes are fixated on Guskull, a game she used to play as a child. Kamita notices the empty machines and urges her to play with him, only to get challenged by some grade schools who mean business. After an intense battle, Toru uses Kamita as bait to defeat both of the opponents, and Kamika gives them the figure as a consolation prize. After the duel, Kamika asks her to go a little easy on kids next time or people won't play with her anymore, unaware that this is the reason why she stopped playing in the first place. Toru feels nostalgic to relive her glory days and asks Kamita to be her partner, promising that she'll go easy on new players. Kamita agrees to team up with her, and she's so happy she takes herself on a pleasure cruise just thinking about it. Just then, her brother tells her she's taking too long in the bathtub and asks her to free it for him. The next day, the squad takes a sigh of relief after beating another tough boss, and Toru heads to the PE class after telling Kamita to meet her at the arcade. After she leaves, the guys ask how he manages to hit the arcade every day, and Kamita reveals it's been draining his wallet. They suggest he look for a game that costs less, so Kamita tries introducing Toru to a bus driving simulator. However, it doesn't appeal to her, so she goes back to playing Guskull. Later, Kamika runs into Kyoko and her friend Makoto, the same first year who's on the disciplinary committee. Toru soon joins them to let Kamita know that she's leaving for the cram school, and Kyoko tells the guy to join one as well or he might get flunked. Walking home, Kamita imagines what it'll be like to be in the same cram school as Toru and starts blushing. Just then, he notices Ikuo and Toru talking on the other side of the road before entering the cram school together. The next day, Araki and Ikuo play the bus game and realize it's much more difficult than it appears to be. Meanwhile, Toru and Kamita wait in line to have their turn at Guskull and learn she's made quite the reputation for herself when another kid asks her to team up with her. Kamita decides to play the bus game in the meantime, but is drawn back to Guskull when he notices Hikari entering with a kid named Takeshi. She challenges Toru to a duel, and Kamita has to team up with Toru while Hikari teams up with the kid she's brought with her. The two teams go through an intense back and forth, which ends with a Toru taking the win. Just then, Araki and Ikuo show up and ask him to run away, while they serve as a distraction because a member of the disciplinary committee is outside. Kamita, Toru, Hikari, and Takeshi run to exit by the back alley, and the latter two start to throw shade at each other for their loss. Turns out, Takeshi is the son of Hikari's boss who lured her in promising that he'll get her a raise if she avenges him. Toru asks her not to fight with the kid, but Hikari starts acting like and advises Kamita to stop hanging out with Toru before leaving. Toru is upset and wants to call it a day, but Kamita suggests they head out somewhere to cool off. They hit a nearby cafe where Toru reveals Hikari was her junior in middle school, and the two became friends at the arcade. Kamita is hesitant to ask more questions, but Toru asks him not to worry because she's having a ton of fun, all thanks to him. Just then, she opens the deer game and learns that she will have to bang another deer for her to level up. She asks Kamita to help her since his deer is a male, and the guy gets nervous as if they're doing it for real. After the finish, Toru asks if she can have the cherry in his glass, reminding him of when she asked for his pudding at the karaoke place. When she says what others order always looks appealing to her, Kamita makes her promise not to ask anyone for a bite other than him. The next day, Ikuo and Araki are punished with cleaning the rabbit's den for getting caught at the arcade, and they're banned from going there until the finals. On top of that, the chairman is gonna deploy snitches in the arcade, so Ikuo suggests they stay away from there until the dust settles. When talking about Toru, Ikuo complains how she's too good at every game she plays, and Araki misses the time when it was just the three of them. Kamita then asks them what they feel about her, pointing out that he saw Ikuo going to cram school with her. Ikuo then reveals Araki even had a date with her, much to Kamita's shock. In reality, he met her at the mall because he wanted the same bunny figure she gave Kamita, revealing her obsession with rabbits. Ikuo then reveals he saw his childhood crush entering the cram school and asked Toru for confirmation, which is why he decided to join it. They ask Kamita what he feels about her, and the guy reveals he respects her as a gamer girl. Both Ikuo and Araki start laughing because they already know Kamita wants to tap and ask him to go for it. Later, Kamika wants to talk to Hikari in private, but she is frustrated and reminds him that her job is a top secret. Kamita says he's here to talk about Toru because she hasn't come to school, and he wants to know why she told him to stay away from her. Hikari reveals that she and Toru were part of the gamer girl squad in middle school, with guys practically begging them to sell their bathwater. Toru was the most popular among the boys, and they tried to compete with her to win her over. However, Toru was a master at games, studies, and sports alike, and crushed everyone who dared to approach her. When boys started fearing the squad, the other girls blamed Toru, which is why she was left alone by the third year. Hikari was worried Toru would crush Kamita too. This is why she advised him to stay away from her. When she asks if he got his ego crushed by her, Kamita says he doesn't have an ego to begin with because he feels like a walking disappointment. Later, he calls Toru to check up on her and learns she stayed up all night gaming, which is why she couldn't make it to school. She asks if they're gonna hit the arcade later, but Kamita tells him it is not safe anymore. That's when Toru invites him over to her place, revealing she bought Guskull disc for her console. After school, Kamita heads over to Toru's apartment and is welcomed by a boy, who happens to be her older brother Sota. As they sit in the living room, Sota reveals he used to be a hardcore gamer when he was young, and Toru started gaming to get his attention. Even when he stopped playing, Toru kept her passion up and often invited his guy friends over to play games. Sota feels guilty because Toru couldn't have a proper friend, but is grateful to Tomoe for becoming Toru's first normal friend. Sota then plays an old tape of Toru a tomboy, but she quickly turns off the TV and scolds her brother for embarrassing her. She then takes Kamita into her room where he sees she has a hobby of making plushies. She asks him to pick one he likes, and Kamita chooses the one that looks like a bunny. Following that, she shifts her focus to the game and reveals she started playing campaign mode but is stuck at one boss. She wishes Araki and Ikuo were here, but Kamita tells her why they won't be playing games anytime soon. Remembering what Hikari said about her, Toru starts blaming herself for stealing Kamita's gaming buddies from him. She tells him to go home because she needs some space today, but Kamita is not gonna let his only shot at getting laid slide so easily. He manages to convince her to go to drive in an arcade far from school where they end up playing a simple football game. After going at it for a while, Toru manages to beat Kamita, but realizes she cut her finger in excitement. Kamita pulls out band-aids that he won from the crane machine from his bag and puts one on Toru's finger, making it look like the in-game ring from the deer game. The two start talking about why Toru started gaming and how it made her all alone, making her think it's best if she gets back on track now. Kamita understands where she is coming from and asks her to hit him up whenever she needs a gaming buddy. A few days later, Kamita is all alone in his usual gaming spot and even has a stand-in for Toru. He gets anxious because he hasn't seen Toru in a couple of days when walks down the stairs and hands him a deer mascot she made for him. She then reveals she's planning on participating in a Comic-Con that Shiori suggested and hesitantly asks Kamita if he would come with her. She then suddenly pulls out a ticket and invites him formally, and Kamika jokes that it looks like a date. She gets all nervous asking if he would like to go on a date with her, and Kamita happily agrees. Just then, Shiro shows up all angry because Toru turned her down when she asked her to go, but now she is willing because Kamita is coming as well. Tomoe holds her back, and Toru officially introduces her to Kamita as her partner. She asks what Toru means by partner, and while Kamita assumes she means a partner in the game, Toru says he's her partner in the real world as well. A few days later, Kamita and Tomoe head to the Comic-Con, and Tomoe asks him to stick behind her since he doesn't handle crowds well. However, Kamita is confident he can manage on his own with the power of simping. The two head to the dressing section where Toru is dressed as a bunny girl army general, and Kamita's pants are creamed the second he lays eyes on her bunny bush. Later, Kamita helps her set up the deer decorations and the Comic-Con market floods with customers. Shiori calls out for some customers to sell some costumes and catches the attention of Miu and Toka, who happen to pass by. They show interest in the dirmas, but Kamita's cringeworthy pitch makes them lose it fast. Kamita suggests they display the dirmas as part of Toru's outfit, and while he looks for the best spot to stick it, Toru gets embarrassed and runs off. Shiori decides to stay back and keep watch here while Kamita goes after Toru. He finds her getting cornered by a bunch of Discord mods and is pushed out when he tries to help her. Just then, Tomoe shows up looking like a walking thirst trap and attracts all the photographers towards her, allowing Toru to get away. Toru then reveals she has to use the restroom but doesn't know how to take off the outfit, so she wants him to help. Kamita is unable to find the zipper on her back, so she gives him a view of her Amazon rainforest, which lets him pinpoint its exact location. Following that, the whole thing goes smooth sailing and the gang even manages to sell stuff, having lots of fun in the process. At night, they visit a local restaurant unaware that Hikari works there as a waitress, and Toru immediately recognizes her. While serving food, Toru and Hikari make sure to take shots at each other, which ends with Tomoe inviting Hikari to cosplay as well. Hikari gets nervous to see Tomio dressed as a full-course meal and skedaddles onto the next table before things escalate. After she leaves, Tomoe gives Kamita a Guskull dirmas, explaining how she got motivated when she saw Takeshi at the arcade wearing her bunny strap. She says she wants to do something that brings happiness to other people and has decided to prepare for college tomorrow. As they exit the restaurant, Hikari sees them off and warns Kamita from mentioning this at school. Just then, Toru decides to walk home alone, but Kamita decides to follow her to make sure she's okay. Turns out she's a little sad over the fact that Kamita didn't compliment her cosplay and wants to go home, but Kamita reminds her she promised to go on a date with him. They suddenly stumble into a park where couples are going at it, and Kamita uses this opportunity to ask her out. Despite being flattered, Toru says she's not good at this stuff and wants their dynamic to change slowly, which in simpler terms means she's gonna dry his wallet before he gets to tap her. Kamita acts as if it's an average Tuesday for him and starts looking up at the moon to change subjects. However, Toru freakishly bites his neck and leaves a mark on it, explaining how his Adam's apple looked biteable. She then puts a band-aid on his neck and says she really loves how he comes after her whenever she runs off. Toru asks if he will keep coming after her, and Kamita embraces her followed by a wholesome kiss. The two then lock arms and walk in the park, and Toru suggests they keep it platonic for now because she has to focus on her studies. Later in school, Hikari tells her friends about the cram school, and both Yuki and Yoko are jealous because she bailed on the mixer tour and went to a high-class resort alone. She purposely leaves the part where she had a whole thing with Kamita out and starts bragging about how they hunted deer when in reality she was the one being hunted by deer. Just then, Kyoko enters the class and gives Kamita a magical girl comic, which has been released after 2 years of anticipation. When Kamita was a kid, he dressed up as magical girl to play with his childhood friend Kyoko, who was surprised by him pulling off the costume despite being a boy. When Hikari and her friends join, Kamita introduces Kyoko as her childhood friend, but they start picking at her for liking girly things even when she's in high school. To stop things from escalating, Kamita says Kyoko has always been a little childish. He later apologizes for embarrassing her and says he would have been in trouble if Hikari opened the comic. He reveals it has now evolved to please a more mature audience, and Kyoko comments he's evolved too because he wouldn't care what others thought of him in middle school. Just then, Tomoe walks down with a skirt, and the guy with her makes Kamita swear not to tell anyone about it. After he leaves, Kyoko notices that Tomoe is wearing some crazy panties and wonders who this guy is. Kamita reveals he's Captain Trek, and he must have asked Tomoe out only to get rejected. Kyoko wants to talk more about panties, but Kamita decides to return to the class, but not before she makes him promise to meet after school. Later, she reveals she wants to have a girl talk with him, but Kamita suggests she find someone with the right anatomy. When Kyoko says he can pass as a girl any day, Kamita takes it personally and decides to show him how manly he can truly be. Just then, he spots Takeshi practicing Guskull transformation with a girl named Rin, and when Kyuka asks Takeshi to have Ren play something suited for a girl, he says the girl working at their bar nails the transformations despite being a girl. Kamita then shows them his own transformation technique, and the kids happily run off to practice what he's taught them. Kyoko is glad to see he is still as goofy as he once was, and Kamita says it's because it made her smile. Later, they too visit a pastry shop where Kamita orders dozens of plates to show how manly he is. Kyoko then starts yapping non-stop and suggests he gets rid of that haircut so he can stack up the hotties on his joystick. She asks if he's gonna ask Hikari out, but Kamita says he is not on her level. However, Kyoko believes the old Kamita would never do this well in studies or having full-on gaming sessions with a senior. Kamita wants to change the subject and asks if she's made any new friends, but Kyoko claims she still enjoys it the most around him. Later at home, he asks Tomo if she rejected another guy today, but she suggests he focuses on rounding up the shotties on magic stick rather than keeping account for her. Meanwhile, Kyoko is reflecting on her conversation with Kamita and wonders how she can pass off as an adult. Looking at her bookshelf filled with magical girl comics, she decides to donate them to the community center. She then runs into Rin, who wants to take a look at the comics, but gets anxious when she realizes it's not for kids. Soon after, 2 girls from her school show up, and while one of them cheers Rin on with magic tricks, the other one decides to have a conversation with Kyoko. She asks Kyoko why she looks so down, and she reveals she was labeled as childish by someone she's known for years. The girl invites her to join the Home Iki club where she can work on her feminine charms and asks her to come on Monday night. Accepting her invitation, Kyoko takes Kamita to the club where they meet President Koharu and Vice President Nao. Since Tomoe is also more or less part of the club, they immediately recognize Kamita but refuse to let him join because the club is girls only. They ask him to wait outside while they dress up for the occasion and later come out dressed in yukatas. The 4 of them sit under the sky to have a moonlight tea party where Kyuka tells the girls how Kamita used to cross-dress as a kid. Kamita then tells the whole story of how Kyoko was sad because her parents had to work till late on Christmas Eve, so he did dumb to make her laugh. While dressed as the magical girl, they ran into Ikuo, who assumed Kamita was a girl. However, when he lifted Kamita's skirt, he was so shocked that he lost his memories. That night, Kamita got hell from Kyoko's mother for dragging her around so late. Even though it was a nightmare, it has now become a fond memory of their childhood. Kyoko then turns her attention towards the full moon, and Kamita starts blushing because she is totally bussin' in that yukata under the moonlight. Just then, the former president Nagasawa shows up and explains the basic functioning of the club, and all of Kamita's worries are blown away. Kyoko then decides to join the club to improve her feminine traits, and Kamita wishes her the best of luck. 3 months later, Kamita and Tomoe decide to have Kyoko join them for Christmas and have her bake a cake to test her home ec skills. In class, Miss Onigata decides to put up a venison stall for the Founders Festival, and since Hikari lied about hunting deer and making a barbecue out of them, everyone wants her to take the lead. Later, Yuki and Yoko ask her if she'll go out with them on Christmas Eve, but she reveals she already has plans with someone. Just when Kamida is wondering who in their right mind is going on a date with this freak, Ikuo shows up and apologizes in advance because he won't be able to hang out with him on Christmas Eve. He reveals he's finally going out with the girl he has a crush on, explaining how they got closer during cram school. Kamida offers full support to Ikuo. Ikuo suggests he starts clapping Kyoko for a change, and Kamida says he'll think about it. Meanwhile, the chairwoman of DC Sanjo asks Koharu and now to decorate the Christmas tree for the Founders Festival, but they argue the job is better suited for the theater club. However, she starts listing all the complaints that she has received about their club and blackmails them into doing her chores. After school, Kamida visits the Home Eats club room and finds Kyoko sleeping on the sofa. He wakes her up and asks why she's wearing the costume, and Kyoko reveals she actually models the dresses for the senior members. She then serves him a cake she baked herself, and Kamida is surprised to see how far she's come. She reveals how the club sells cake every festival, so she was practicing and thought she'd have Kamida taste test them. As Kamida is leaving, Kyoko trips and falls onto him, so he asks her to take off the costume. He's about to ask her on a date after the festival, but decides to keep his feelings to himself. Later, he walks up to Hikari and asks her for help in planning a date on Christmas Eve. Hikari doesn't pay much attention to him at first until she realizes he's planning on asking someone out. She gets all invested in it, and the two come up with a plan together. Afterward, Kamida heads to the Home Eats club room, but runs into an angry-looking Sanjo on the way. When she asks Kyoko, she reveals Sanjo didn't like the design for the Christmas tree. Karu and Nao are out of ideas, so they send both Kamida and Kyoko to look for the decoration materials. They decide to visit Kamida's place to get some of his old clothes, which takes them on a nostalgia trip. At night, the two walk to the school to donate the clothes when Kyoko asks him why he came into the club room. Kamida shows him pastry shops on his mobile and asks if she would like to go to one after the festival, which catches him off guard. She says she can't come because she has to clean up after the festival, and Kamida decides to change subjects, noticing she's uncomfortable. The two continue walking toward the school, pretending that things are normal between them. Later, Koharu and Nao meet Kyoko at the club room, and she tells them she sent Kamida back home. They reveal they actually saw what happened between the two, and Kyoko has a feeling she might have hurt Kamida's feelings. She wants to make it up to him, so Koharu and Nao decide to introduce her to someone who's an expert in boys. The next day, they see Kamida pinning Ikuo against a wall and assume the rejection made him switch lanes. They take Kyoko to Hikari and offer to design her Santa costume if she gives them relationship advice. Kyoko asks her why guys are eager to get on their ding-dongs this time of the year, but Hikari starts yapping about how a guy asked her and her friends out as well. Assuming she's talking about Kamida, Kyoko immediately leaves, and Koharu and now return to the club room to cheer her on. Kyoko says she doesn't mind him asking out other girls, but she does not want him to be ridiculed because of her. Despite putting a strong front, Kyoko has trouble sleeping at night and starts knitting like a grandma to ease her mind. The next day, she almost gets run over by a truck, but Kamida luckily saves her, much to her shock. Later, they two take a walk together and discuss the recent activities at school, with Kyoko mentioning how she's barely getting any sleep because of club activities. She then questions if he asked anyone out for a date after her, and Kamida reveals he went for karaoke with Araki, where he ran into Hikari and her friends. Turns out it was Araki who wanted to show Kamida how to ask girls out, but Hikari already had plans. Yoko wanted to watch boxing, and he and Yuki had already dated in the past, which made him look like a desperate loser. It was so hilarious, and Kamida later played out the exact thing in front of Ikuo, which made her think he was hitting on boys. She is glad it was all just a misunderstanding and asks Kamida to be her childhood friend forever. She then hands him hand-knitted underwear as a token of their friendship, hoping it'll keep his popsicle warm. Later, she takes him out to buy new undergarments against his will and asks for his suggestion. But he reminds her that he's actually a guy. When Kyoko says she sees him as a girl next door, he decides to play along, but it is pretty obvious Kyoko sees him as a man. As they walk back, Kamida yaps about how embarrassing it feels and suggests she goes shopping alone next time. They quickly go back to their usual selves, and Kyoko invites him over to see the Christmas decorations once she's done making them. Later, the squad gathers around the Christmas tree, and Sanjo is really impressed by their work. After the design gets approved, Koharu and Nao leave to take a nap in the club room, and Kyoko tells Kamida that they use their old underwear to create some of the decorations on the tree. Kamita then asks what she'll be doing tomorrow, and Kyoko reveals she'll be the cake saleswoman of the club. She then leaves to prepare for the big day tomorrow, and Kamita walks back home hoping the plot gods would send some chick into his lap. He walks by a park which takes him back to the time when Tomo had punished him for stealing her magical girl costume, but Kyoko desperately wanted her to let it go. Just then, he notices Ikuo acting like an idiot at the park and notices that Toru and Shiori are there too. He asks them what's going on, and Ikuo reveals he got rejected by his childhood crush. When he starts crying, the girls tell him to man up, but Kamita claims Ikuo's more manly than he ever could be. Meanwhile, Kyoko is preparing cakes for tomorrow but messes up because her mind is filled with Kamita. The girls ask her to take it seriously and tell her a scary story about a girl who was dragged into Santa's world because she messed up 3 cakes. At home, Kamita is channeling the pain of rejection into his workout routine and starts yelling, causing Tomoe to rush to his room. However, once she sees him holding the underwear Kyoko made, Tomoe apologizes for intervening in his gooning session and leaves the room. Kamita then realizes it's actually a guy's underwear, which confuses him because Kyoko sees him as a girl next door. He doesn't want to drown in misery like a loser, so he decides to go for an early morning jog to release his frustration. Meanwhile, Kyoko prepares for school and lets her mother know that she'll be home late before leaving. At school, Hikari is dressed as a reindeer straight out of Santa's naughty list, and the guys are confident she'll win the Santa contest with ease. They think their deer stall will get a lot of sales if she wins the contest, so Hikari goes with the boys to distribute flyers so she doesn't have to deal with cooking. Yoko then leaves because she's got work at the swim club, leaving Yuki to deal with it alone. Yuki panics because she's the type of cook not even Gordon Ramsay can fix, but their stall is saved when Kamita comes to the rescue. At night, the event kicks off smoothly, and Yuki thanks Kamita for saving their asses last minute. She then asks if he's gonna ask Hikari out, but the guy says he's pursuing someone else now. Yuki immediately figures it's Kyoko and mentions how she's changed quite a bit since she last saw her. Since the stall is already running, she asks him to go after her and wishes him the best of luck. Meanwhile, Kyoko is working at the pastry stall when she spots Rin in the crowd and gives her a cake on the house. As she runs off to her sister Sanjo, Kamita shows up and tells Kyoko that he wants to talk to her. She keeps making excuses about being late, but Kyuka says he'll wait for her as long as he has to on the roof. Later, it's time to announce the winner of the Santa contest, and Toru ends up winning much to her own surprise. Kamita is heading to the roof when he sees it through the window and watches Tomoe embarrass herself by tripping over Toru while rushing to the stage. Meanwhile, the home ec club decides to have a small dinner after selling out their entire menu, and Kyoko thanks the girls for helping her grow as a woman. However, she still doesn't feel content with herself, so they hand her the dear Odin and tell her to head to the roof because Kamita is waiting for her. Once there, Kamita says he has trouble sleeping because she's been on his mind non-stop. He explains how he felt attracted to her when he saw her in the yukata under the moonlight, but then she got busy with the club activities so he couldn't see her as often. He wanted to spend more time with her on Christmas, but held back when she said she saw him as a girl next door. However, Kyoko says her panties were drenched when he asked her out, meaning she now sees him as a man. Kamita then asks her out again, but Kyoko wants to think about her answer while eating the Odin with him. When Kamita sits on the bench, he realizes it's super cold and places the underwear she gave him to warm the seat. She refuses to sit on it, stating she made it for him, so when Kamita sits on it, she places herself right between his legs. While eating, she tells him she's wearing pink panties, and Kamita asks why she's telling him this. She recalls Kamita telling her that boys are interested in this stuff regarding the girl they like, and her telling him the color of her panties is an indication that she is also interested in him. She then explains how she was trying to cover her feelings for him by seeing him as a girl next door, but then she realized she wanted more and dropped the act. After some playful banter, Kyoko finally decides to look him in the eye, and Kamita wastes no time in embracing her. The two voice out their love for each other and then share a kiss as the fireworks go off. 10 years later, they are happily married, with Kamita now working as a magazine editor. They have a delightful daughter who adores eating Odin, and their love remains as strong and vibrant as ever. That is it for this video. Leave a thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe to the channel for similar content. And as always, thanks for watching.